terrorists, they don't want to talk. We're more than willing to talk. What's happened in the interim is that now when you go to see the Hamas leadership, and I went at the end of January, that, you know, and when you go to the Middle East and talk with any political movement, or any government, Israel, Egypt, Egyptian security services, in the wake of a conflict, those are always the most difficult discussions, because you can't have a discussion. It's with 1,330 or 1,600 or 1,400 people laying in the streets in Gaza, you can't say, so, what do you think of the Mitchell Commission? You know, you can't, oh, wasn't Obama's election great? You can't do that. The memories are too fresh, the pain is there. So it's time to listen. And I went, and I always just sit down and have a long cup of coffee with Osama Hamdan, and so from time to time I go to Damascus and have a cup of coffee there and just listen, especially in the wake of a conflict. And we had a 4-hour cup of coffee, and Osama Hamdan said, you have your 3 conditions. I didn't interrupt him and say, they're not right. He said, you have your 3 conditions, and now we have our 1 condition. Here's a list of Israeli officers who should be charged with war crimes. That's our condition. You meet it, and we'll talk. Talk is open. We now understand the Israelis. They're not interested in a 1-state or 2-state or a 3-state solution. They're interested in destroying the Palestinian national movement, and we are the Palestinian national movement. And if Israel or the United States wants to bring Abu Mazen on the back of a tank into Gaza, we'll treat him like an Israeli and we'll kill him. So if Israel's intention was to stop the kind of thawing of the glacier that I've been talking about, that was the accomplishment. Because it's now much more difficult for Hamas to talk to us, while it's easier for us to talk to them. Here's my kind of template for, and I know I haven't talked to Israel, but we're going to have time for questions and pronunciations or whatever. But here's kind of my template for this, and it's a bit of history. I'm first a historian. During the French Revolution, during the deepest, darkest, almost the deepest, darkest days of the French Revolution, William Pitt the Younger, a very talented prime minister in British history and a vicious alcoholic, was approached by members of the Gironde through intermediaries, saying that the Gironde and the new revolutionary directorate in France would love to open negotiations with Great Britain, would love to open talks and understands with Great Britain, that there's no reason why Great Britain needed to worry about the Gironde, that they were not an expansionist movement that wanted to take over the world and burn down Europe, but that they were French nationalists. And Pitt said, they're revolutionaries. They cut off the head of the king. We're not going to talk to them. And for sending this mission, some members of the Gironde were condemned by the other political party in the assembly, the then Revolutionary Assembly, who lived on the mountain, the Jacobins. And the revolution swung to the Jacobins. And they did want to burn down society, and they did burn it down. They burned down Europe for the next 18 years. This is where we are. Hamas, Hezbollah, the Muslim Brotherhood, are the Gironde. They're not gonna lose. They're the wave of the future in the Middle East. Thank God they believe in democracy. And that when they get in office, they're gonna be forced to balance the budget. They don't believe in the veiling of women. If you go into South Beirut, you'll see veiled women, 1 or 2. They don't believe in Sharia law. They believe in constitutions. The Jacobins are Al-Qaeda. They're the people who ran our airplanes into our buildings, and they're our enemy. They can be defeated, but we can't do it alone. We're going to have to talk to the emerging Islamist movements in the region, and that's Hamas and Hezbollah and the Muslim Brotherhood. It's going to take us time, and it's going to be uncomfortable, but it's inevitable. I'm happy to answer your questions.
Thank you. All right, I'll call you as I see you. Yes, sir.
We had an Israeli visitor come to the Belfer Center some months ago, and he all but said that it was the Israelis who took care of Bosnia. What are you saying? In your opinion, or do you know, was it Ebola, was it the Syrians, or was it the Israelis?
I don't think the Israelis did it. And if they did it, then they did it with the connivance of the Syrians.
So you're saying the Syrians?
Yeah. I was sitting with Arafat in, here's another story. I was sitting with Arafat in the Muqata, his headquarters in Ramallah. There was a tank that went around the Muqata every 10 minutes. It scared the hell out of me. If you've ever seen a tank up close. I used to have to come into the Muqata kind of watching where the tank was and then running across the street and hoping the Palestinian guys who were sleeping would wake up and open the gate. Anyway, I got in one night. I sat with Arafat and he would sit there and he would, Arafat was a guy who didn't say very much. I know that he's not beloved in America, by the way, but I liked him. But he would sit there, and every once in a while he'd go, he had a big stack of papers, and he'd be reading the stack of papers, and every once in a while he'd read something, and he'd say, this is interesting, and pass it on. And so I'd sit and wait for him to kind of focus on me. And it was really late, not unusual for him, one morning, 2 a.m. in the morning, and he turned to me and he said, I ever told you my story about the Syrians? And he had fairly good English, but in case he didn't, Dana was sitting there translating for him, and so over the tough parts, and I said, no, sir, you didn't, and he said, let me tell you, he said, we had very difficult problems with Assad, Hafez al-Assad. I said, yes. He said, they fought us in northern Lebanon. We had the civil war. I said, yes, sir. He said, we had very deep